Well, welcome to the video. This is the Free Hands Academy State of the Stick video, and this features a panel discussion on the state of the Chapman Stick, as well as some kind of incidental video that we captured during the 3-day event while out here in Bel Air. And it kicks off with a lovely excerpt from Claire Steger performing a Chopin piece.
Because we're hoping to do something in the spring as well, when Steve Adelson comes out for the NAMM show. And so will it be the last event? I don't think so. We had 17 full-time students and 2 additional day students. And so Robin and Dave, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you made it out.
Thank you for doing the day.
Absolutely, absolutely. And something that I noticed is that we got ideas kind of along the way, and so it was really nice the way everyone kind of came together to make this happen. This was truly a group effort, and I don't speak for myself, or I can't speak for myself, but I view you as all kind of shareholders in this organization called the Free Hands Academy.
To a music store and I saw a stick. I thought it was the coolest thing of all time. It just had, this is gonna sound corny, but you ever look at something and know it was what you were supposed to do? Yeah, the stick was that way. I mean, I was like a bass player, guitar player. I saw the stick. I went home. I got a Telecaster and a precision bass, and I came back and I traded it for the stick.
Wow.
But I knew. And I called Emmett. I was 18 years old. I called Emmett on the phone, and I'm like, yeah, I was told to call this number. Can I get a book? You're like, yeah, the book's about to go. It was, I think the first Free Hands was just about to come out, late 70s. And I said, oh, you play the stick? It's like, I'm Emmett Chapman. Oh, that's close. I played for a couple of years, and I was originally a guitar player and a bass player, so I walked in the stick thinking, okay, I play guitar and bass, it's going to be a piece of cake. And I failed miserably because I was coming from that mindset that, okay, this is going to be an extension of what I already do. And I struggled with the tuning, I struggled with a lot of things. I ended up playing it for a couple of years, went on the road with a band, and the stick got stolen. So, unfortunately, with an instrument, you can just go anywhere and pick up. So I told myself, okay, well, I'll get another one. 16 years later, I was living in Los Angeles, and I went over to Emmett's, well, actually made Emmett spoke on the phone, went over, and he had let me play some instruments, and I ordered another stick. Hearing him play was a real inspiration, just the sound of it. But it was different because it was 16 years later. I was an adult musician now. Even though I didn't play stick, I understood what music was, I understand what instruments were. Whereas, I was 18 years old, it's like, I want to play really fast and a big old amp. You're in a different mindset, So I was, after reaching adulthood as a musician, the stick made sense.
They were written for children.
You had a gold record, and I remember that you were doing session work, but I see on Facebook all the time you're doing session work now, and it seems like the stick has become pretty much a staple in all your session work.
Yeah. And it came about because I stopped asking, because that went nowhere, where, would you like me to play the stick on this, on your record? And I would just bring it as, it's a bass. You won't have to ask about it. Time is money, and they don't want to experiment with it. So I would just say, well, this is my new bass. And at the very beginning, before the NS, I would just present at that time I had a 10-string, and I would just say, well, super bass. You're using 4 strings. I got got 10. My 4 strings better than everybody else. We've got the NS, something like that, something new. So I went, oh, well, how many strings does it have? And I thought, oh, only 8. But it was in 4th. And so I adapted to that as well. And that's what I just use as my bass now. Unless they request, oh, could you bring the Precision or the Rickenbacker because they want that sound. They go, oh, you know, bring whatever you bring. We're calling you for what you do. And it made everything so much easier because when I first started out, I went to Vegas and was like, well, we want you to play like Ray Brown. And I thought, this is a Vegas hotel. Call Ray Brown.
What about composition? You're doing work. You did some stuff for the Guild, right?
Yeah, there was an internet series, and it started from nothing. And her name was Felicia Day, and she's an actress. And
I didn't know this because I mean I was a fan of the Guild.
well, she was on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then she has a couple other TV shows out now. And she called me up one day, and she says, you know, I'm going to produce this and act and direct and write and the series, and we need a theme that what they call brands it. So just like when you hear that wacky bass line or synth bass of Seinfeld, you know, the Seinfeld show's coming on. So they wanted a tune that would brand it. And her husband, or they're not married, but they've been together forever, was a screenwriter that I worked with, and he did Mr. Holland's Opus. I used to do some film work with him. And so he says, oh, you want somebody to bring, call Don Schiff, don't be asking around, just get the guy over. So she played me a temp of what she wanted, which was another band from Europe that she couldn't get hold of because she needed the royalties to use that. So she says, can you make something like this, which is a lot of writing work. Can you make something like this, but not be that, but have me like it better? And so every once in a while that works out. She goes, I like this better than the original. So then that led to doing the underscore to the show. Then they got another producer as it became more and more successful. And they hired another writer to do the underscore. But when you brand something and that's the tune, that doesn't go away. So in writing, that's what you want to do. You want to get the theme, and then you don't care what anything else happens.
So do you get royalties every time?
And the beauty, you're going to love it.
Money for that.
Within
Cherry
the
on
first
top.
year,
Money.
10 million people became fans of the show. If they each sent me $1, I'd be phoning my parts in from Hawaii on a big screen that I would, you know, buy the facility. I made $350. My grant, because there's no royalties on the internet. So then Comedy Central loves the show. They call up Felicia and they say, we want to buy the show. And oh my God, I'm going to buy the biggest, best house. I tell my wife it's going to be great because it'll be in syndication and we have the boilerplate stamp of this show. And she goes, you know, I don't need the money and I love this show and they're going to assign other writers to me and I don't have to do it. But,
I have a question for Don. I think Stick Night '99. I think that was when it came out like VHS, wasn't it? Yeah. I was in the audience that night. I didn't know who you were, and
I remember.
I'll never forget. I'll never forget. You played Rainfall. That was a life-changing moment for me. I was in the audience that night, and that was the night that, hearing that bass line, I was like, I didn't know you could do that with a stick. Yeah. And just the way, I mean, you were like 2 bars in, the audience was like, yeah! And I was like, maybe it was me to scream at you. But that was a life-changing event for me, and I've always loved
for me so well, and now with the fretless that
Oh,
I just
yeah.
can't get over it.
You're best.
It's incredible. It's such, each instrument that you've created is life-changing and ever-growing. Every time I think, oh, now I know how to play this instrument, isn't this great? After, like maybe the first year going, well, Emmett, I'm a bass player, and these little strings just aren't going to cut it for me. I need... And so, of course, Emmett has already researched all that, and so I had to like take apart the wheel and put it back together. I'm going to buy my bass strings, and I'm going to string this thing up like that, and it sounded really bad. It didn't play well. It was always had a choked sound to it, and so now I know. Oh no, well, Emmett's already been through that. I'll just give it to me off the rack. I'll just play it this way, or even pre-rack because I have first NS before it came out online that I love it, and Dean has the other one, and I follow it every time it gets a new owner. All right, who owns it now? I follow it. I put cameras in Dean's house. You better treat that right. So I do play it. It's just not out as much.
Yeah, something about it.
I'm sorry, you're an amazing NS player. I love your work.
Well, thank you.
You
We're in the Mutual Admiration Society here. You better keep singing, because when I just heard you say, I don't know about my singing, I think, oh God, and I sing, and I don't give any prerequisite out. I just, well, I guess I'm okay.
You know, Don, for those of us who do play the regular stick, it'd be great if you could do a little lesson on how to play your tune Timeless sometime. I think that's a really brilliant tune. I think people would love to learn how to play that song. That's a great tune.
No. I can get you through the complicated part. And I can relearn the lesson. I would love to do that.
That's a really good
Let's see. What's on the horizon? We now have the fret rails. Is there any new design of something that you're thinking of coming out with? Like we've gone from the 10-string to the grand. Now we have the NSs and their variations. Is there?
Yeah, I never plan that far in advance. I make the instruments for two reasons. One, to play and explore music on it, and that's what I like to do best. It's all about the universe of music that you can play on a tapping fretboard. But then I also try to make them so they're easier for me to set up. And in the process, they're easier for everybody else to set up. If they know a little bit about it, they're kind of lucky, they can maintain their instrument and keep it in good, low action, light touch. And so for me, it's with Railboard, I'm loving it. And so are the people that help me do the preliminary setups, my daughter Grace and Yumi. And they're raving about it too, and that's the most honest criticism or praise that I can get. This instrument is, it's very precise, it's very consistent, uniform, nothing changes from one day to the next. And I'm really happy with it. So now I just want to play music on it, you know. And so I go a whole week without playing, you know, and it hurts. Because I really am just torn with other things, and paperwork, and business, and repairs in the wee hours of the morning. So then finally I get to play, and then time goes by, I don't even know how much time has gone by. It's like a little time machine. So I was planning for the future. I just think the Railboard is fraught with opportunities. I can explore coatings on aluminum, plasma coatings, ceramic coatings. I like the hard anodizing. It's as hard as sapphire or ruby, and it should last a long time. If it ever needs a fret job, you put it back in its fixture, and underneath the truss rod are little threaded holes that fit precisely into the CNC milling machine fixture. And then you can do the whole surface over computer program, the entire thing. Bring it down 20, 30 thousandths of an inch. And that's a fret job. And then you re-anodize it again. Different color if you want.
Purple. Purple, yeah, there's a lot of talk about purple.
Next time around.
Or orange, Hazley, actually.
They do that. They do shots of different dyes after the anodizing job itself. It's kind of like tie-dyed T-shirts, though. A little funky. Haven't tried it yet. But in this run of 52 Railboards, we just got them from hard anodizing. They're in 5 colors. Dark olive green, brown, and maroon, and blue, and black. And three of them in a chrome polished mirror finish.
I think that might put Pierre Boyson over there. Who was it that was on the stickers that wanted one of those? Is that
Was it Pierre Boyson?
was he wanting one of those? With the,
Yeah.
okay.
So the ones that were anodized, they just arrived. So I haven't even taken them out of the packages yet. So I'm curious myself to hope that everything worked out great, because I do truly feel like a mother hen with these instruments, you know, and I worry about them when they're out of my own hands. Well, I have a lot to worry about.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How many Chapman Sticks are in existence that you are aware of that you made?
It's 6,600, something like that. There's 6,350 now in this production run. I made the numbers honest again. I started with 101 in 1974. I should have started with 001. So when I got up to about 2,200, I started over again with the oak stick in 1989 with an adjustable truss rod. And I was in Finland playing a jazz festival, and I had this vision, like when you're working, you don't get on the idea level so much, you're at a practical level. But if you're out traveling, the ideas start hitting. And so the idea was, let's make a flyable stick. Let's make it really lightweight. Let's put a guy wire on the backside instead of a truss rod. You know? Let's see if we can look through it. So that didn't work out.
Because it was almost destroyed with fire. And Grace, I'll never forget what Grace said. Grace says, "Oh yeah, the sicker and more messed up, better. We love them all. You know, when it leaves here, it'll be good as new." And so she really did. She fixed it up. And when I referred to it, just kind of lovingly to the person that I was selling it to, I called it Grace. She kept that name. And I was like, that story. She was recalling it Grace, and I was like, I just kind of made that up. You know, like I called it Grace, but she's like, no, keep the name.
Does Grace know this?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
She's just like one of her.
She's not a sentimental person.
No. She refers to herself as a shop rat.
Well, she's with us, she is, but she has other guises too. She can glamorize herself, you wouldn't believe. But I never see her that way except once a year. You can sight it, that's good. You can do it by feel and play it with feels high, adjust the truss rod. That's good. But the real proof in the pudding is to press the high melody strings or the high bass strings down and see, visually see with the light in front of you bouncing off, to see the glowing fret tip and the clearances of the strings that you're holding down over the next higher fret.
Yes, like
And then you go to that next higher fret, and how's the clearance over the next one? What do you know about there it is, just appeared. And so, all the way up the fretboard, every clearance is uniform. And it turns out that the math is such, as you get closer, the spaces get closer, but the triangle from the bridge height, the very, very slight triangle, gets steeper. So the clearances remain absolutely the same all along. And so there it is. This clearance here should be so minute, but it should be like that here too. It's so minute. And then I set the flat so that the first fret is also the same. That is optimum. And then I get this criticism sometime, I think maybe 3 times in my life, and that is, well, wait a minute. The action's a lot higher up here than it is down here. And I say, oh, we can fix that. Just raise it flat. Okay, there it is. Except you sacrifice the action down with this end and make it much harder. So that's just the nature of things, that it appears to be higher up here, but how it clears the next higher fret is absolutely the same. And then I do it on the bass side as well, to look at the high strings. You can't see the low strings like that, so I do that by ear. Do this by eye, and these by ear. That's how you set up an instrument. And if you want to tackle it, if you haven't already, it'll bring you good luck as a musician to know that, not just feel it, but to actually see it.
I have
Did I get off on a tangent?
No, that's fine. No, hang on every word. I had a question for you regarding rail itself. Is it kind of scooped towards the middle frets? Is the
Yeah, yes.
Because I thought my strings were wearing it down. And I actually had the phone in my hand, and I was like, that guy, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind.
What this is machining operation. I insisted that after everything is done, the final cut would be a fly cutter going across to trim the tips of the frets, to bring them down about 10 thousandths of an inch, so that it have absolutely even playing surface. Now that's great, but for the bass strings they need relief. So I do a scoop, a long scoop here. And it's with instead of a fly cutter doing a straight swath across there, it's a ball cutter that has about an 1.5 inch radius, or a 3-inch diameter. And it comes down, think of it like swing low, sweet chariot. And the radius calculated by the computer, the CNC, is 17 feet up. And it comes down like this. It comes across. And the original plan, which I rejected, was to do each one individually, just calculate it, because it's computer numerically controlled. But I said, no, I want it to be one cut. And I want this flat cut to be one cut. I got to know, because that's how I do it by hand. So that's how these are made. That's the all-important part. That's the whole design. It's these little fret tips. That's all it's about. Everything else is, the backside is kind of interesting, more interesting actually, but it's to reduce weight. That's the reason for it.
I have a question about the Railboard. I got in a quasi-argument with somebody at the Healdsburg Guitar Festival about aluminum and steel. And how is it that aluminum is harder than steel?
Oh, it isn't. Steel is much harder. It comes in all different grades. It can be a soft steel and then heat treated to a Rockwell hardness. You can do the work like if you're making an injection molding tool. You make it out of soft steel and then you harden it by heat treating it later, and then it's almost indestructible. If I use steel or iron of any kind on this instrument, it'd be very, very heavy and much harder to cut. So aluminum is ideal. It's easy to machine, it's cheaper, and it's softer. And then the surface is hard anodized.
So that's what it is. It's like a diamond on top.
Yeah, rubies and sapphires, I've been told. I read it on Wikipedia.
It's a way of having a statement made. This person over here goes, oh. And that person goes.
Okay, next.
You don't, I do. You don't have a question.
I have a question.
Okay.
I saw you play when on the opening night of Bottom Line in New York City, Manhattan Island with Weather Report. I was there, and you were like a front man. Right, you were in the front of the stage, so you were like the guitarist, but you were playing bass. Man, I wish he could play at a stick. And I never got to see you again. And that would have been 1975.
Yeah.
And so then you called me. You were in LA. You said, I heard you playing at an Indonesian restaurant in Westwood. And my question is, what's the name of that restaurant?
Oh, wow.
I can't remember.
So
I guess there's two answers. I could make up a name and you wouldn't know if it was correct. Or I could say I don't remember either.
Was it one syllable word, like the craft or the loft?
Yeah.
Or something?
Yeah.
I can't quite remember what it was.
I specifically remember walking down Santa Monica Boulevard and I'm looking in the shop windows and I hear this sound and I come to this one doorway and the stairs go up. I follow the stairs up and I'm standing at the end of a room about as big as this room, and down at the other end of the room is Emmett. You were with the percussionist, I believe.
That could be.
Yeah, yeah.
It might have been Rick Cantu.
I don't remember. I don't think I introduced myself or anything. I just was standing back there listening, and
Right.
I was just blown away. I just thought, wow, I've never seen or heard anything like that before. And I was new to California. I came up to audition for the band at that time. And I thought I'd better get in touch with this guy. So I found out that Zawinul was also interested in being a stick player.
He bought one of the first six instruments.
And so, as I was saying to all of you downstairs, in that band, it was a very competitive spirit, but in a good way. It was meant to push you forward, and not let you become comfortable in your musical place. You know. So, with that in mind, I just thought, well, I better get on it. I got to get a stick, you know. So I contacted Emmett and went over to his house and met his family, and this was part of his family. And
You're caught in academia now.
I am. I'm going back to school to get my master's degree in music education, and it just involves not just taking classes, but I'm also teaching at 2 colleges. So my spare time is, right now, and most of it is, besides spending time with my wife, is I'm working on a new solo recording.
Yes.
We have 4 basic tracks cut, and my hope is to complete those 4 tracks by November, so my manager can start talking with promoters and booking agents about dates for next summer, and then hopefully complete it by spring of next year. But there's already one stick song that I've written that's on the recording. It's called Lorelei. Beautiful piece, just like a tone poem, and hopefully there'll be a couple more.
When you play out live, will you play, like, what kind of band would you travel? Do you travel with a group or an ensemble, or is it truly solo work?
It's a combination of who enters my world at the moment.
Okay.
I started working with a singer named Billy Valentine over the summer, and I just love making music with him. He's very old school. He's from the Ray Charles, Sam Cooke, you know, type of style of singing R&B, gospel, combination music. And he's just such a honest musician, you know. On the floor, on a downbeat, and reaches the person that we're tossing it to in a timely manner so that it's a friendly toss, it's not aggressive, but it,
What are you on the recording? That'd be part of this recording adventure that you're on?
he's singing, we're doing a remake of a Annie Lennox song called Cold, C-O-L-D. And second take, and his part's done. And he's done.
He doesn't have to carry around all those rigs, the gear.
And he came in with his sunglasses and his lyric sheet, sat down in the room. We ran through it as a band. As a matter of fact, we had started recording it. And he showed up last, the guy, because I know how he works, you know. He showed up last, we took a little break, got a vocal sound. We cut the first track, which was perfect. I made a couple of suggestions, as a producer, and he nailed it. I mean, and the guitar player turns to me in the control room and said, "Man, he's the real deal."
For the rest of the day now.
Yeah, he's done it. It's good. It's good. A long time admirer of your work, and just how do you approach your whole composing, playing? Is it one continuous thing? I know a lot of times I start composing a new song and then I wind up playing on it, so it kind of evolves. And then there are times when I just hear something and it becomes a song. So how do you approach?
Well, I haven't actually written very much in the last few years specifically for the stick, because a lot of what I've been working on lately has been more kind of band oriented. So it's a different way of imagining the music. But when I first started playing the stick, which is back in 1985, I really wanted to learn it from a bunch of different angles. One of them was as an improviser and really just kind of exploring the instrument. I came from a keyboard background, but I was not an accomplished keyboardist. No one would really want to listen to what I would have written for the keyboard. So it was like, okay, I can become a mediocre keyboardist, or I can play this instrument that nobody knows what it's supposed to sound like. So that's what I'll do, and that way I get to be a part of it. And I started getting into electronic effects more and more and more, and they became the drivers of my music. And I stopped composing, and I really started just playing and getting into sonic explorations. And so that became like this really double-sided, coin. Like, I really wanted to learn how to play, but I also really loved how it sounded when I hit the distortion and the chorus and the reverb and the delay, and I could just go whang and listen to this great sound. And I had the good fortune of living in the same town as this guitarist named Tim Reynolds, who is just a phenomenal musician. And he and I started improvising together. We had a group called Sticks and Stones, and he wanted to play the drums, which he didn't play. So he was just as bad on the drums as I was on the stick. And so we played a few gigs like that, and we could clear a room in about 20 seconds. It didn't take long. And then he got tired of playing the drums and went back to the guitar. And so here I was playing this instrument I barely knew how to play with a guy who was just really, in a lot of people's estimations, a real musical genius. And so it was like a cover for me. So I could really not have to be kind of the focused, authoritative element in the music, but I could just explore little ideas individually with this big umbrella of this guy on top of me. And I did that kind of thing for a few years, and then I realized I'm not getting any better on this instrument. I'm really not learning how to play it. And I put everything away. There's an exercise in freehands that actually was the foundation for one of my tunes. It's a tune called Ojos Verdes. And the melody of it is your catapult exercise, the one that goes 2, up 4, up to the 9, then over to the 2 again. So it's like this little pattern that you can fly through with your hand. So really, I do think that most of my pieces came out of technique, and then I guess they still do. So in a way, when I write for the stick, it's really writing through the stick, not writing outside of the stick. But then when I write for a band setting, it's very different. I'm writing more in my head.
Like an arrangement.
Yeah, exactly. And then bringing that to the stick.
I just want to say amen, because that's pretty much my approach as well. And it starts with technique, discovering something, some techniques, and then at some point it'll crystallize, and I want to do a composition on it. It almost forms itself from the remnants of everything I'm doing. But the technique comes first, the discovery, and then the song follows.
Well, there's another side to that too, though, which was very early on I started to learn really simple song arrangements, organ music, popular tunes, and things like that. And in learning those pieces, you also learn techniques that you can bring into your own composition. So I think that if you rely only on your own motivation, your own line of thought, in terms of developing these techniques, it's only going to take you so far. You also have to look at the musical traditions around you that you're interested in and try to bring those into this instrument, which has an unusual tuning, an unusual physical aspect, but that's also immediately rewarding. Like if you get an idea and you can put it there in your fingers and you can hear it. I've never heard of another instrument like that. I don't think there is another instrument like that that is as clear a conduit from your instant creative idea, get it on the board, and express it.
I had the pleasure of getting a sneak peek at some of the AZUL work that you've got coming up last night. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that applies to what you're doing?
Well, it really does kind of bring it in full circle. I wanted to say it was great to listen to all of you guys talk about your experiences, because I live in kind of the hinterlands as far as the musical world goes. I mean, you all are right here. You're here where it happens, and you're surrounded by the music industry, and you're surrounded by a huge successful machine of making music.
But you're on the East Coast.
But
you're in touch with Europe. You're at the megalopolis.
Well, but when I started playing, my point is when I started playing, I was in the middle of nothing. And the only person I had to work on the stick was me. And I had that book. I had no access to any other players. I had Tony's music to listen to and to emulate. But I was a keyboard player and a huge fan of the Doors. And I wanted like a hipper bass sound on my keyboards, and that's why I started playing the stick. I saw Tony playing Three Over Perfect Pair Tour. He's playing bass lines with his left hand, keyboard parts with his right hand. I thought, I got to get one of those. And then when I got my hands on it, I was like, okay, this is like a piano, but I can bend the notes and I can put the vibration, with vibrato in the strings. I can whisper with this instrument and I can howl with this instrument, and I can't do that. And I can't do that with the piano.
Now, will we hear that on AZUL, or sorry?
You do. I think that's my point is with AZUL, it's a trio. It's a trumpet player, great trumpet player named John Dirth, who's been around for decades and has played with Tito Puente and Emily Remler and Buddy Rich and all kinds of amazing bands. And he teaches at the university. And he and I have been playing music really since I started. He's another one of those people who put aside whatever pretense he might have had, like, I'm a really good musician. Here's this kid who knows nothing about music. But John actually jammed with Emmett in New York at somebody's loft up there back in the 70s. I think that Abercrombie brought you to meet him. Didn't you hang out with John Abercrombie up there for a little bit? So he brought you to this loft that John happened to be at a jam session at. And he heard me playing in this music store where he teaches. He says, I had to come out here what that sound was, because he remembered the sound of the stick, and that's how we met. And we started playing together, and he's one of my oldest and dearest friends. So he and I played together in kind of informal situations over the years, but never as like, it's our band, this is our project. We've always kind of tangentially worked together. And the drummer is the guy named Brian Caputo, he's about 10 years younger than me, and he's an amazingly expressive drummer. He doesn't play. He's not the kind of guy who says, what do you want me to play? What kind of a groove do you want me to play? He just jumps in like all the rest of us do. He plays very dynamically, very much with color. He lets me be kind of the groove machine and doesn't try to force things to develop in a certain way. And I've always wanted to play with this guy. I've been listening to him for years, and I finally asked him to do this project. And the chemistry between the three of us is it's fantastic.
If there's 9 more tracks of what I heard last night, we're all in for a big treat.
Well,
it sounds fantastic.
It's the coolest thing about the stick is that it's like this gigantic orchestra. And if you know how to get the sound you want out of it at any given moment, you can take the whole orchestra on a dime to a new key, a new feel, a new sonic place. Everything can change all at once. You can't do that with 3 or 4 guys in a band. But you can do it in a split second, and then you can do it again. Do it again, and they can just keep evolving and changing. And that's really what this music is about. It's about just listening to each other, but also really shifting things along, not staying in the same pocket forever, but really, okay, like what you were talking about getting out of that familiar zone, pushing to the next thing. So that's all we do, is just push it to the next thing.
And that's almost like weightlifting. It's like it's only when you stretch and move the muscle that it actually gets bigger. So when you take yourself out of your comfort zone and you get into that unstructured place, it evolves and it helps your musicianship.
What I like about the stick in this context especially is that I'm not really being much of a soloist. It's not like I'm sitting here playing grooves with my left hand and playing solos. What I'm doing instead is shaping the music almost as if the whole compositional arc was a solo. So you take the idea and then you find the next idea and you find the next idea and you don't really rest, you know. And we're all kind of doing that. We're all kind of listening and like, okay, how do I take the tennis ball that somebody just handed me? How do I take that ball and how do I turn it into something else? And it evolves really quickly.
Sorry. I was going to ask, is there more video? Is there going to be video footage?
Well, I videotaped the whole session, you know, and there were some weird little camera issues, but generally speaking, it's super casual video. You know, it's like, hey, there's a camera on Alfonso. He's doing his recording session. You know, it's not for the video necessarily, but I thought it was fun to put it, you know, to have that just to kind of show that it was actually done that way. That there's no overdubs. That it's all.
It's cool to watch because you'll see the guy change out the horn, and the drummer is taking the side of his stick and raking the cymbal. I mean,
he does amazing things. We had this gig in New York, and there was an extra cymbal just sitting beside the drum set, and he picked it up and held it upside down over the top of the cymbal that was there, and the threads on the cymbal stand were sticking out, and he's sitting there going, shing, shing, pulling it off of the rings and making all the cymbals just start going. He's incredibly creative.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a question for?
Yeah. I want to comment. You talked about being geographically isolated. That's the upside of being in LA is there's a ton of great musicians from all over the world. The backlash is this is not a place to come if you're not an adult musician because it is so distracting and there are so many people and you will constantly go, I am not ready. At the same time, I have friends that are playing some of the biggest bands in the world. They're great musicians, but even in the music industry, people don't realize there's a rat race. I have friends that tour with huge acts, Gaga, Christina Aguilera, but they're caught in the rat race because they can't get off the road. And they want to write and they want to do all this stuff, but no one knows them as anything other than so-and-so from Sting. They've never had a chance to develop their own identity. When they try to come home and develop the identity, they can't stay because if they're at home, there's no money coming in. So now you got to go back on the road. People don't know that. You've continually been able to evolve yourself as a musician, and it's always, just when you think it's over, you can take it to the next level. And I look at that and I'm like, man, and it's funny. I grew up in I traveled a lot, so my father was in the military, but a lot of my life I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. At the time I grew up in Tucson, there's really cactus and really good Mexican food, and that was it. And I hated it. I'm like, I want to go to LA, it's going to be all these musicians, it's going to be great. I'm in LA and I love it here, but I miss being in Tucson. Because in Tucson, nothing was going on, and there were no distractions, and you could really get inside your head and really do some things creatively. Okay, I think grass is always green on the other side, but I hear that influence in your music. You don't have this obligation to follow what the rest of the world is doing at that moment. And I've gotten caught in that and lost years of my life, quite frankly. Whereas you're always developing, Greg, and always growing. So I admire that about you and admire that about your music.
I think about the people that you work with, and it's clear that you're going to find a few people in your life as musical partners who really feed what you do and transform what you do. And without that, I think it's very hard to really grow as anything other than like a solo musician who sits there and does their own thing. So I'm really fortunate, especially to have John, because he's an inspiration to many, many people besides me. But when you find the right people, when I was working with Leroy Moore, he was a really great person to play with. And Tim also. But if I hadn't found those people, I think a lot of what I ended up coming up with never would have happened. So you got to be open to the people who are there around you, who are creative people, who are good resources, and develop relationships, creative relationships with them. I just think that when you're in a place like this, you have more opportunities like that.
On behalf of all those that attended and those that were teaching at the Free Hands Academy Summer Session for 2013, I want to thank you for watching the State of the Stick video. We had a great time over the course of 3 days and 2 nights, being together and learning from one another, and really exploring this instrument and the free hands methodology. As we were putting together this video, it became apparent that there was more to the event and more to the state of the stick than just a bunch of us sitting around in a room talking about the instrument. That wasn't enough to truly put on display the state of the stick, and that our community is very special and very closely knit, as is evident in this last image or last video that we made together. This was an idea that Greg Howard had, so we all got into a circle and had a few more moments playing together before we checked out. I'm excited about the Free Hands Academy 40-year anniversary of the Chapman Stick for 2014. We're going to be adding 2 more days of instruction, and we'll be joined by Gary Jubilian, Steve Adelson, and Bob Culbertson. So it is my hope that if you made it out this year, you'll be back, and that if you're considering about coming out to one of these events, that you'll consider coming out to Los Angeles, California for 2014 for the Free Hands Academy. It's Gene Perry signing out.